Good evening, everyone. It's a little after 6:30, and to respect your time, I want to get started, hopefully on time, and get you out on time. The plan is for me to go through an hour presentation, and if you could hold your questions until there's usually slides that will answer most of the questions here, so just hang on to that if you could for a while. Hopefully you've picked up one of these, at least one for each couple or whatever, and you've signed in here, and especially curious to see how you found out about this presentation, and so on. My name is Tom Weisler, and I live in Mount Vernon, and I was asked by Eric with the City of Cedar Rapids Sustainability Office to do a series of presentations about this project. I need to identify or recognize a few people that are from these different groups here, and sometimes I'll give you the quick answer, but the right answer is from somebody else, so that's why they're here. From the Nature Conservancy, which is one of our sponsors here, Patrick Snow, is it? Patrick? Okay, Patrick. From the City of Cedar Rapids, Holly, thank you for setting up our AV and everything, as well as Eric. And from Alliant, May is over here for the technical questions on Alliant and net metering and things like that. And from the Neighborhood Network News, Robin Cash is videotaping this presentation. And I think that's everybody. And Cheryl Valenta just walked in from Iowa 350, right? Yeah. No, I'm sorry. And from Moxie, Chris Hoffman here. So I hopefully identified all the our subject matter experts here tonight. So thank you for them. Thank you for being here. The purpose of what I need to do, my plan is tonight is to spur people to action, make the case for change to go with residential solar power. And on that note, we talked about a little bit about who we are. Let me ask who you are. Are you customers of Alliant or someone else? Just by a raise of hands, are you Alliant? Alliant. Any one REC? Is that Maquoketa Valley? Maquoketa Valley? Okay. Last time we had a bunch of Lynn County, but I think you're the first Maquoketa Valley REC. So some of this in the slides when the Alliant rep is talking about the net metering and things like that, it's going to be more obviously pertinent to the Alliant customers. Hopefully for some of our later courses, there will be REC representatives there to talk about that. So just recognize it's mostly geared to... Is REC taking part? Yeah, I mean, this qualifies. And REC wants to be engaged with these, but I think they don't have a rep for the first several of these sessions, but they will later on. Okay. Another question, so I can learn a little bit more about you. Are you homeowners, or are you looking at this for residences or commercial? All residents, okay, good, because that's a farm, okay. I think Moxie will be able to help you out there, but some of this stuff won't be pertinent to you. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that up front. Pricing will be different. I know some guys on Alamali north of Mount Vernon who's done that on his hog confinement barn. So I know some people that have gone the solar route for ag purposes, but you qualify for some depreciation schedules, and your federal and state tax rebates aren't talked about in these slides. So, but that's no problem. If you're like me, I've had some interest in solar for some time. I've been, talked to some contractors, and then knew some about the rebates and so on, the credits that are available, on a federal and state level, but never got it all put together at one time to make a decision to go. But that's kind of the purpose for these series of sessions, to spur people to action. We'll talk about the incentives coming up, some timelines that are coming up, but it's hopefully to get all the information to you and recognize that I'm no salesman for Moxie. The idea is to make this an educational thing for you. And in that light, we want to make sure that these sponsors here, and the main ones are they're listed on the bottom here. We talked about the Iowa 350, Nature Conservancy, Indian Creek Nature Center, and if you haven't been out there since their last remodel, it's definitely worth a trip. Talked about representatives from Iowa Lynn County Public Health. You wonder why Lynn County Public Health is here, and they are into air quality big time. And using solar energy versus coal energy, it makes a big statement for them. And the City of Cedar Rapids obviously is a representative here, and they're big on doing what they can in sustainability here as well. But I want to make sure you know where I'm coming from and what I'm not an expert on. And this presentation is not intended to give legal or financial advice. we'll have some figures up here for different examples, but they may not apply to you, so just keep it in scope. The program is intended to be merely educational, and you should talk to your financial or legal professional before making any legal or financial decisions. And also communicate with your energy provider, Maquoketa Valley or Alliant, to clarify any rules, requirements, or paperwork that you may have to do for customers going solar. So I just want to make sure that we're all squared away with that up front. We talked about our partners that are here and identified them in the room. Why are we here? Hopefully to lead in creating more sustainable communities by making solar simple. Do you guys remember what was your first contact? When were you first aware of the concept of solar energy? Anybody remember?
Calculator.
I'm sorry?
Calculator.
The solar calculator?
Solar calculator.
Solar calculator? Okay. Is this the dome on the sun Pathfinder? I don't know if you're talking about that, but.
I teach science. So
you teach science? Okay.
Yeah.
At first time it came across my radar was the Jimmy Carter White House. That was a long time ago. But he put the solar panels on the White House, and Reagan took them down. That's what somebody said. Yeah. Technology's gotten better. Price has gotten immensely better since then. But at some point, you need to make a decision. Or if you waited for the best technology on computers or the best technology on phones to come out, you'd never buy a cell phone because they keep getting smarter, keep getting smaller, and more powerful, and so on and so forth. But at some point, you want to get into that marketplace, and that's what we're hoping to do by spurring people to action with this incentive plan. We're going to talk about the Midwest Renewable Energy Association in a second here, but hopefully that explains the reasons why we're all here. It's an interesting premise that this organization put together here, this group buy, solar group buy. The idea is they did an RFP, and there were representatives from MREA in the Milwaukee area, as well as a local citizens advisory committee, and they went through an RFP process to find out solar installers. And I was glad to know that there was a market for it, that there were like four different companies that bid on it, and that the prices were pretty close. They weren't real high, real low, that there was, that the market is getting educated enough that there were people that were bidding on it, and they were bidding on it smart. So the idea is to get these lower prices through a competitive contractor selection, which we have done with a company called Moxie in North Liberty, and we'll talk about them in a second. It's a community-led outreach. This is local groups, a couple slides ago, these are Lynn County, it's City Rapids, it's local groups that are involved with sustainability. It's a limited time offer. It's, we want to frame it, and that's why I talked about spurring people to action here with a September 30th deadline, or end of September deadline to sign on if you want to be a part of this. Strong customer education, the pieces that you have here in the flyers, and hopefully this hour of class, and sometimes it's the questions after the class that people learn the most on. So the focus on education, and hopefully the economies of scale. Instead of a company talking to, my last class had 27 different people in it, so instead of making 27 appointments for those people, they were all able to come to that class, and they were able to get the same information and have a representative from the company there to talk about their solar installs. Who is MREA, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association? It's been around for a couple of decades, and they promote renewable energy through education courses in solar, solar thermal, and small wind. To get myself up to speed on this course, and I've been involved with sustainability in a lot of different ways in a college setting for a long time, but one weakness that I had was, quite honestly, in solar panels, the solar power area. So I was glad to have the opportunity when I was asked about doing this, and took a 20-hour course with the MREA to get up to speed on it. Second chapter was on Ohm's law and all math, and there's tests, there's quizzes on each chapter, and there's tests on each chapter. And I thought I'm going to flunk this course, but luckily after that I aced out the rest of the other chapters. But I thought I'm in way over my head here, but I was able to get through it here. I've referenced a company called Moxie out of North Liberty as the installer profile, and they were selected by the RFP process. And I'll turn it over to Chris here in a little bit, but they started out as an energy efficiency consulting company, and I'd heard of Moxie before I even came up with it, before I even got involved with this process. So I knew a little bit about them ahead of time. They have an office like a block away from here, Cedar Rapids office, but the main office is in North Liberty. And they are a group of solar fanatics that moxie up every day to meet the challenges of a renewable energy future. These are some of the things they do. There's probably another bullet that should be added here to the first one, and that is they do the site visit. If you leave the contact information with us here with your sign-in, Moxie representative will get in touch with you and arrange a time to do a site visit. And this is not complicated. It's not doesn't take a lot of time, but just to see about how valid, how important, and how legitimate solar energy is for your house. But then you'll design a solar array, submit the application to interconnect to the utility companies, and that's a big thing with the authorization to get information from Alliant or your whatever electrical provider you have. I live in Mount Vernon, and I know this involves electrical work and construction work, and I know contractors in both areas. But I'm glad that this is a certified process, that the people that are doing this know what they're doing. It's a master electrician that's involved with the hookup, the construction of the solar arrays with a NABCEP and certified installer, and that's the North American Board of Energy Practitioners. So it's a certified installer. This is what they do for a living. It's a master electrician that does a lot of this for a living. So it's experts going through the process. And then they help with some of the paperwork. I talked about the release form, and you might be able to get that from Chris later on, but customer authorization to release information. This is an Alliant form where they basically gives them the authorization to see what your last year's electrical bills. And that's pretty cut and dried. But they also help with the paperwork when it comes to doing the state tax credit. Federal tax credit is pretty easy to do. It's not that tough. The state tax credit involves a little bit more, and that's going to be one of the last slides that we talk about here. But that's a little bit about the installer. Chris, am I missing anything that you want to add at this time about Moxie? Okay. Solarized Cedar Rapids and Lynn County. It's focused on residences. I think they'll take your business if you want to look at agriculture, but some of the prices in here may not apply to you. You may be looking at bigger installations than a normal home. It starts with a free no obligation site assessment, and they lock in the pricing. I've got mine up here in a file, but after the site visit. Numbers to remember here are 5 years, 12, and 25. The 5 years is on labor, the installation of the actual product up front. The 12 is the guarantee on the inverter. We'll talk about what that is and what that does a little bit later. Then 25 years on the equipment, the panels. And doing my coursework with MREA, they give examples of the solar panels lose some efficiency through time, but they've got examples of panels that last 25, 30 years and ongoing. So at some point you may want to make a decision about upgrading to better panels if they lose a lot of efficiency, lose some efficiency over time, but that's, again, 25 years down the road. And they've done these solar buys at a variety of places in Milwaukee, Bloomington, Illinois, and the Champaign-Urbana area. So we're not a test site for this whole process. It's been done at different places before. So we're not the alpha, the first one through this. And financing is available, but you may want to do your own thing on that. That's up to you. And American-made products, I think the last time I heard solar panels come from 3 different companies, and 2 of them are American, I believe. But that's a little bit about the group buy. How does it work? As part of the RFP selection process, Moxie locked in a base price of $245, which is about 20 to 40% below the national average. So there's hopefully by bundling and putting an incentive as far as the time is concerned and everything else, we got a good rate. That's the base rate for the $245. Then, if more people sign on to this program over the next 3 months or whatever, the price keeps going down. If you hit over 50 kilowatts, which is about 10 homes, it goes down a nickel. It keeps going down a dime. If you get more homes, and on and so forth, down to 20. And if you are an early adapter, and if you install or want to get signed up for this right away, and you get locked in on the first rate, and 3 months later we find out that we're 2 or 3 steps down the line, you will get credited back that number. So you won't be penalized for signing up right now. I mean, the idea is to get that discount to as many people as possible. So that shows on that graph the amount of power and where the steps are, and about how many homes that qualify to get to that. So in that community, I don't have the RFP with me, but it was community-based vendor, that they have the professional certifications, and they're not new to the business, so they've got a history of quality work. So that was some of the criteria that was used in picking, in this case, Moxie. Some solar basics. There's a little bit of science here. I'm not sure you can see the scale in the bottom real well, but this is a measure of the power of the sun. And it starts off red and being more powerful than yellow, green, and blue. And this map of the United States, what it's intended to show is red down in the southwest as being pretty powerful solar energy available. Through the bulk of the country, it's very yellow, and it goes up to green. So we are pretty good as far as the irradiance map, a really strong, powerful sun over the bulk of our country. As a comparison, it shows Alaska and Germany here, which of course are a lot farther from, some are a lot farther from the equator. So they are way on this end of the scale. It's not as effective with being able to regain sun's power, but still there is value to it. Germany has set a national policy to get 50% of their total energy from solar, not just from clean energy, wind or whatever. They want to get 50% of their energy from just from solar. So that's pretty aggressive there. So is there enough sunlight? I think so. We'll talk about individual households in a little bit here. Solar installs to date. It's getting to be more and more popular. I see it as I drive around Cedar Rapids. I see installs going up. Over 44.7 gigawatts of solar PV is installed. It's enough to power 8.7 million homes. And this source is number one. There was a recent Gazette article said that solar was number two as far as new generation brought online. And in a couple of months that I've been preparing for this course, or the courses that we've had already, I've been watching the media and just to see what's out there. But there's headlines like solar industry is doing just fine. Johnson County added to the solar grid. That was just from last week. They Johnson County added to the ambulance services building that's going solar. This is an editorial about utility scale solar benefits Iowa. And then there's another article here from maybe a month ago about Alliant doing a solar array west on Highway 20 outside of Dubuque. So solar is, Alliant is getting, looking at resources like solar big time as well. I also noted somewhere that, this I thought a little ironic, but there's a coal museum in Kentucky, I think it is, that recently converted as their energy source to solar. So that was interesting. But that's about solar to date. Home values. In the course, they talked about that I took. They talked about the solar panels averaging total 15% value to your home. I talked to some realtors out of Mount Vernon to say, is that approvable data that I can be putting up here? And they said it's really more market specific. I think there's more of an appetite for solar. I think people that are buying homes are thinking about, are giving more thought to their energy source. But I'm not sure I can make that blanket statement that it's going to add 12 to 15% to the value of your homes. From a couple of sources here, it says solar generated electricity brings more value to your home. A reduction in electric bill is easy to quantify, especially if you have some history of what your usage is after you've had it for a while. A study across 6 states, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab says that the home buyers will pay a premium for solar homes. I think you're going to see more and more of it out there, so it's not as an odd thing for people to see. I did stop out at the Cedar Rapids Realtors Association to see if they had a statement for this, but they wouldn't guarantee anything either. I mean, they're familiar with it. I mean, they recognize it. They identify that there are people that are interested in solar homes, and that it doesn't scare people off. So, but automatically making that 15% guarantee is a little bit too much to put out. So how does the solar, how do these panels work? And we're not going to talk about the multiple layers in the panels and the silica and things like that. But from the sun, the photons excite these electrons, which creates DC power. DC power, if you know the appliances in your home, they run on AC power. So an instrument called the inverter converts that DC power to AC power. The converter can be either on the outside of your house by your meter, and you will get a different meter than what you have now if you go with the solar. So, or if it's inside the house, it'll be within a yard of your panel box in your basement, let's say. So that is a component besides the panels, the very visible panels there you'll see, but the inverter, either outside your house or down in your basement. And then it ties into through the meter. It's the hub of your home energy system. Counts for power produced, consumed, and sold back to the utility. Everybody's got a meter now, obviously, and I know technology is getting to the point where meter readings aren't going to be done manually. If, the cities are converting out their meters so that they can be read electronically. At this junction, when there is service, this is a grid connected system. Hopefully that's no surprise to anybody. You're not totally off the grid here. If you want to go off the grid, this is not the class for you. But it is relatively inexpensive, maintenance free, no mechanical, things like that. So it's an easy system to maintain. Recognize that if the power goes off, like the storms the last couple nights, Alliant can control shutting off the power from the transformer to your house, but the residual power that's being generated by your solar panels needs to be shut off going the other direction so that Alliant representatives can work on the lines. So that's shut off at the house with these instruments, at the meter and the inverter, so that power doesn't go out while the lines are being maintained there. So just want to make sure you know about that. So that's a quick 101 about how the process works. Inverters, this is an example of an external one. This is an example of a display that you can put on your laptop or your phone or whatever to show how efficient in this case I think it's 18 different panels, how efficient they are. So if maybe this panel catches some shade late in the afternoon off a chimney, it'll show as being a little bit less effective than the rest of the panels, which are showing this full solar window all day. But there's a lot of good information there if you want it. I had a presentation by an architect in Mount Vernon a couple weeks ago, and he pulled out his laptop. I think he was a Moxie customer, as a matter of fact. He pulled out his phone and showed me how all his panels were doing right that instant in his house. So amazing technology is available out there. This talks a little bit more in depth about inverters, and there are three different types of inverters, but microinverters, I think, the string inverters is one that Moxie is not using. So it's basically between the other two, depending upon if you have one flat roof or if it's multiple planes on your roof that you've got panels on. So that is a discussion, the right answer with Moxie based upon, so you're doing the number of panels and making a decision on the style of inverter based upon the number of panels and the layout of it. Is there a maximum number of panels per string? Is it 9 or 12 or something?
You can go up to
20,
20.
okay. Are most of you thinking about roof mounted, except maybe the ag? Most of you thinking about roof mounted. That's the most common one when I ask that question, but it's mounted flush to the roof using existing pitch. I had a question a couple nights ago about Tesla's solar shingles, and the answer from I think the Alliant and the Moxie representative was that it's still very, very new technology. It's very, very expensive. Yes, at some point there may be shingles that actually function as solar panels, but that's a long ways off. So that's not the focus of this discussion here. If you want to wait for that, then you can do that. But this is not relevant at this point. South-facing pitch is the ideal, but east-west can be doable too. And we talked about the solar Pathfinder, the map that does a solar map of your shade patterns, if there are any to deal with on your house. But that's a consideration besides the south-facing and any obstructions. I've been around long enough to know that my first house, I deliberately put bushes around the outside of the house, save the envelope of the house and make it more energy efficient, and put in trees that were close to shading certain sides of the house. But that's not good, especially if it's a one-story house for this situation. This doesn't show real well, but on location and siting, when you get specific about actually in the neighborhoods, the south-facing is obviously ideal. Avoid shading trees, building poles, chimneys. The yellow houses have the best energy efficiency as far as from solar panels versus the purple ones. I'm not sure we can get any lighter in here, so you have to take my word for that. But that's a comparison that a Moxie representative can do during a site visit to see how efficient your panels will be. This is kind of the same thing, and again, this talks about if there's shade to deal with, or if it's an east-west roof, that you're going to probably lose 22% of your solar producing power. That's not to mean that solar isn't still a good way to go. You just maybe not have as quick a payback as you would if you had a second two-story house with great solar capacity. Sorry about that here. Mounting a ground mount. Know a couple of people in Mount Vernon that have done, or outside of Mount Vernon that have done a ground mount. It's good for larger arrays, requires a large unshaded area. Takes the best advantage of the solar window. Easy to remove snow and dust. Somebody mentioned that actually dust might be more of a problem than snow, and snow and ice during the winter. That's from a different class. These are static in this particular picture here, but one of our partners, the Indian Creek Nature Center, if you haven't been out there, they have examples, and Alliance did all this installation and supports it in a major way. But they have good examples out there of 4 different types of solar panels. One is they have the static ones that are roof mounted. You know, they are on the main building. They're facing mostly south. So there's that style, which is most of you people are probably thinking about. Second one is that they do have a ground mount system out there as well. It's static; it doesn't move, but and it's facing to the south, so it picks up solar energy that way. But they also have an array that's obviously mechanized on motors that tilts. It follows the sun from east to west. So during the day, it follows the sun and captures, and expands the solar window basically, which is pretty cool. And they've got another series out there that tilts and follows the sun. So it catches the angle of the sun. You know, the angle of the sun changes through the course of the year. So it catches about the maximum solar energy that you can in the day with that exposure. And it's a little more maintenance, but it's still, those are great examples out there. So if you've ever been out to the IBEW hall on Wiley, there's a solar array that, there's a explanation board inside the building that talks about the solar system there and the efficiencies. And I think that might have been put in by an electrical journeyman's group out there, but I'm sure Alliance has supported that. So, but very informational. As I mentioned earlier, you're obviously tied to the grid here. Photovoltaic system is connected to the grid. If the power's off, like a couple nights ago with storms, you are off power as well. We're not talking about, you know, basement full of batteries along one wall that you're storing energy. This is a pretty basic system here. So just recognize that you're not going to be able to have power when the power goes down. Utility supplies electricity above the system output, and it's like the least expensive type of system. But for my money, it's easy to maintain, not a lot of moving parts, and it's the focus of this education session. This slide, before I bring up the land rep, this bar chart on the bottom kind of goes through the hours of the day as to when your usual energy usage is. Pretty low at night, pretty low in the middle of the day if the house is empty, but there's a little rise in the morning when everybody's up and out, and then in the evening until it goes down. And so that's the electrical consumption in the bar chart. And then in the middle is the ideal solar window, with how much production happens during the middle part of the day. This is probably the time to talk about metering, net metering, and stuff like that. So
you see the term net metering up on the board, and I just wanted to take a second to really explain that, because that is somewhat of a foreign concept. So when you're thinking about solar or any type of DG installation, it's going to have an impact on your bill, right? So net metering is essentially the net of what you use, consume from us, and then what you produce. So whatever that difference is what you get billed, and that's called net metering. So we just want to make sure that all customers that are going through this potential interconnection process are aware of what that bill impact is going to be. As Tom mentioned, there's rollover. It's similar to rollover minutes. If you produce more 1 month, you carry that over into future months. It all depends on what your usage is and the load cap that we set for you. So what I would encourage you to do is really contact Alliant Energy as you go through this process to understand what's going to happen from a bill perspective for you. In addition, you'll run through the interconnection process, and Moxie Solar does a really nice job of handling all of that paperwork for you. We actually implemented a new online system called Power Clerk this year, so you can watch that all move through the process if you want to be that engaged in your installation and understand what those next steps are. But we have a team of individuals that are really just dedicated to the interconnection process. I have business cards here, so feel free to grab one after the presentation's over. But it's a dedicated team of individuals that just moves customers through the interconnection process and answers any questions from a bill perspective. So as customers of ours, except for you, we absolutely want to help you through this process. So please do contact us. There's requirements to contact the utility 30 days in advance of construction. And again, Moxie's really good about making sure all of that paperwork is done on your behalf. So like I said, I've got these business cards. Feel free to pick one up afterwards, and I'll field any questions after Tom gets done with the presentation. I'll definitely stick around if you have any specifics. Thanks.
Thank you, May. We need Alliant. Alliant, you're connected to the grid, or Maquoketa Valley. So make sure it's a partnership. I mean, they're very forthcoming on the partnership, so make sure that you hit all the timelines and so on with the paperwork with Alliant. As I went through this educational process over the last couple months to prepare for this course, I did check with other people that might be interactive with this. I checked with my homeowner's insurance, happens to be State Farm, to see what impact is this going to have on my house insurance. And in his case, it said it's not. It's an attitude house, and it's not a big thing. But to get the right answer, check with your own homeowner's insurance to find out if they need a rider, if there's an increase in cost or anything like that. But that's the right answer. So make sure you find out with your home insurance. I know that the fire chief in Mount Vernon asked, what is their familiarity with solar panels and inverters and things like that? And he was all over this, and they've done training for this, even in Mount Vernon. I'm sure the professional staff here in Cedar Rapids has done that. But they know to look for it. They know to, if there are solar panels on a house that's in a fire situation, they know to, one of the first things they do is shut off the power to the house, or gas or whatever. They know to look for that inverter. There's probably a power switch, dead switch, whatever, to shut everything off so they can work on it. And if there's a roof fire, they'll try to go through the roof at a place where doesn't involve solar panels. If they do have to go through the solar panels, they will. But they're equipped for it, they're educated on it, they're trained on it, even in a volunteer fire department. So they are familiar with the use around that. Anybody belong to a homeowners association, condo association, anything like that? I don't know of anybody. I've been able to ask that resource to find out if any homeowners associations have any issues with this, with solar panels. In Mount Vernon, I did have the question from a session I did there about backyard ground mount solar panels. And there, our code is they need to get it. It's like an outbuilding, so that they needed to get go to a board of adjustment to get a waiver or get a permit for that. So, but you don't need a permit, obviously, if it's on your house. So, but just check with your local city governance to see what the right answer is if you go with this route. Yep. Thank you again, May. Before you put a $10,000 to $15,000 whatever solar panel system on your house, make sure you get the low-hanging fruit. Alliant's got all sorts of offers out there for making you more efficient before you go this route. I happened to get June 27th. It was my Alliant Energy report with my usages over the last year, and it compares average home, my home, and efficient home. And my profile happens to be, they figure out how many people are living in the home, what the square footage of the home, and what decade the house was built in. So you get an idea of how, and the cooling system. So you get an idea of how efficient are you now. And is it worth putting more into a solar to draw down your energy usage, energy expenses? But take advantage of this. in my 20 years in that house, I've had, I think, 2 Alliant energy audits, energy efficiency audits that they've done. So take advantage of those resources. I don't know if it's still out there now, but there was a programmable thermostat that was, there's a credit for, a rebate on, or something like that. But there are a lot of offers available once in a while through your energy provider. But make the conversion from incandescent to CFL or LED lighting. If you're changing out a major appliance, look into Energy Star. Recognize the ghost power usage, like where's the energy going when you have computer on all the time, and shut off power strips maybe. Do the weatherization thing, especially as we get into fall and winter. And just study what your usage habits are now. In my home audit, I realized that my wife and I are 2 people, and we have 6 places on the ground floor to tell the time. Do we need 6 places that are 4 of them being on electrical just to tell the time? So get the low-hanging fruit. There's figures of 60% of all electricity is wasted. I don't know how they can figure that, but that's a percent I've seen several times in my through the coursework and through this class. So do the easy things first here. Is my home well suited? You'll find out during the site visit. But do you have the south-facing roof? Are there any shade issues? In the coursework, I think it talks about the cutoff is 8 years. If you're within 8 years of changing shingles, change them now or make a move. You okay? So obviously, until the Tesla comes out with their shingle panels here, you need to make a decision about re-roofing. Is the roof structurally sound? There's been a buildings person here from the city I've asked that question, and they've never run into it in their when they do the inspections. Roofs that weren't strong enough to support it, and I think Chris mentioned it from at Moxie. They've never run into a situation where they had a roof that wasn't strong enough to support the solar panels. And then, how is my home efficiency right now? Ask yourself the questions about the low-hanging fruit, and take a look at your energy audits that are provided from Alliant. Does Maquoketa Valley do the energy reports like this? Or you're on a farm, I don't know if you have that. I don't know of the RECs.
They'll do an audit for you, but you don't get anything to report.
Okay. Okay. Alliance obviously probably a bigger base.
We've got several farm locations that we work with Alliant.
Okay. Cost factors, the system size and design, which type of inverter, which type of modules you're looking at, slope and height of the roof. One of the first classes we had a person in the class ask about providing some sweat equity, help will Moxie knock the price down even more if I volunteer my kids to help you put on the solar panels and so on. And the polite answer was no. You're dealing with electricity, you're dealing with roof, and you're dealing with you need a correct installation if it's going to be up there for 25 years. So sweat equity is not an option. Also, there's a question in the class once about, this was a kid in the front row who, he was taking real copious notes here as I'm talking, and he brought up towards the end of the class that he had gone online and bought solar panels, and obviously an inverter too. He had gone through YouTube tapes to how to install it, and by the time he's figuring out a napkin here, he literally, before the end of class, said, all that work, it wasn't worth it compared to the price that he could get as part of this package here. So you appreciate the do-it-yourself attitude, but and he still had to get it inspected, of course. I mean, this is an electrical hookup. You got to get it inspected before you and do the permits and so on. And he had to do his own paperwork for the state and the sign off with the. He had to do all the work with Alliant to get the access to information and so on his own. So he knew before the end of the class that it wasn't worth all the work that he did to get to that point that he did. Probably a lot of satisfaction with having done it, but I'm not sure it was worthwhile. That's some cost factors. Incentives. I knew of some of these ahead of time, but I'd learned a lot about others through this process. The first one out there is the 30% incentive on federal. And that's a pretty easy one to do. Tax accountants, CPAs are pretty familiar with that. But that 30% is on for like another year and a half, and then it goes to 26% for a year, and then it goes to 22%. So it is, the 30% is out there for literally another year and a half, and then it starts going down, and that's as far as it's been set up for right now that I know of. So 30, then 26 in a few years, and then 22. The IO tax credit is half of the federal, so that's 15%. And it caps at $5,000. And I've asked, does anybody ever had to cap it? I mean, does anybody hit the cap or that big of a solar install that that they would reach that maximum? And it's never happened, is what the Moxie guy said. Net metering credits, I talked about you need Alliant. Recognize that you will probably never have a zero bill. There's transmission fees, there's overhead fees, there's that Alliant has. You're never going to have a zero bill. You're never going to probably have a credit, make money off of it either. But just recognize that there will be a savings though, but not to that extent. The depreciation schedule, that is more relates to ag and commercial. So I don't even hardly talk about that here. And then the USDA grants. But the quick ones are the 30% federal and then the 15% state. If you are looking at other incentives besides those, and I'll talk about another one in the next slide, there is a website, dsire.org. And if you put in, it's pretty simple, you put in your zip code and it'll list all the options available for tax credits. I put in Mount Vernon's and there were like 50 there. A lot of them didn't apply necessarily to me. I mean, there's for hospitals, for schools, nonprofits, new home construction. But obviously the federal and state ones are up there. But for ag or some of the commercial items, you may be able to get other tax credits by looking at that site and finding out what you're eligible for. So hang on to that website. But those are a couple of the tax credits, a couple of incentives fiscally. This goes a little bit more in depth. Moxie will give you a price. That includes labor, system installation, all the wiring, etc. You're not going to get a new roof out of that, but there's no maximum on the federal. And this is why I asked if you owned your home. You don't have to be the primary resident of the home, but if you're going to ask for a tax credit on it, you need to own the residence that you're putting it on. And get any further details, ask your tax professional, because that 30% is actually a length of time. You don't have to take it this year. And I'm not going to quote you the number of years, but you can move that forward or move it out if you want. The state one also has a time frame to it that you can move that forward. You don't automatically have to take it the next year. So as you plan your taxes, as you go into retirement, you might want to determine how you want to move it forward or hold that for a little bit longer or not hold it. So there's some opportunity there in that 30 and 15 with the timing of when you take it. Residential, the federal not to exceed $5,000. This is something that I learned from this course at the state, in Iowa anyway. It's currently maxed at $5 million, what they will give as far as the state credit. Last year it ran out in about the second or third week in November. The year before it ran out in December. But that's not to say that if you don't get into it, the cycle this year, that you are on a first come, first served basis, so you'll get the next year to benefit. So you're not going to lose that 15% tax incentive. It may be delayed by the state because they've maxed out that $5 million pool that they set aside. So just make sure you're aware of that. There's no additional sales tax, exempt from the state. And this one was a good one, I thought, that I didn't have any concept of. But if you put $10,000 installation on your house, you don't have to pay the taxes on that $10,000 increased value for 5 years. There's a moratorium of 5 years. So ideally, put it on, sell your house after 5 years after you've maxed out taking the reduced charge in your assessment. But that's another stimulus that's out there, another incentive that's out there as far as the credit on your taxes. So keep that in mind. This is actually a Moxie installation, typical house, 19 modules, a little over 5 kilowatt production, and will produce over the course of the year 6,600 plus kilowatt hours. And this is the example that we're going to use in a couple slides down the road here. So yours should be relative to this, but I mean it's not going to be automatically the same as this. Remember I talked about the national average versus the locked-in 245 that Moxie is doing. So an average national rate is in the 350 per watt area versus 245. So one example goes to the same series here, 30% tax credit, 15% Iowa tax credit, and you come up with a net cost figure. So if you or your accountant will want to figure out what your rate of return on or what your return on investment is, and that's figured out here, or your payback. How quickly will it pay back? I penciled it out for myself before I had the site visit done, and I knew it was going to be about 7.5 years, and I think the actual answer was like 7.8 years or something like that for me. So I was pretty close in how quick my personal payback was. So and going out 25 years, I like to be able to lock in or stabilize this cost that I'm going to have every month for electrical. So I need to make sure that you know that 30% isn't happen tomorrow. It happens when you file your federal taxes. So and the same with the state. It'll happen when you do your state taxes there. The next slide I think talks about home equity line of credit maybe. Oh, environmental benefits. A few slides talked about what the financial incentives for the benefits of going solar are, but then there's just the feel good. What value to get out of it just doing the right thing. And this shows an example of about 250,000 pounds of CO2 for a typical system over 25 years. It's like taking 23 vehicles off the road, or 39 tons less waste sent to the landfill, or preserves 4 acres of forest. So there are environmental benefits as well in the area of sustainability. This is a home equity line of credit. I checked with my bank in Mount Vernon, and they had no closing costs for the month of June and July, I think, if you wanted to do something like this. Hypothetical situation using the data from a couple slides ago with the total cost minus the 2 incentives, which happen when you do your taxes, with a final cost of $6,700. And in this example, they picked $5,000. You got to decide how much you want to finance. It almost assumes that you're getting these automatically, so that's somewhat confusing. But so on the $6,700, he's obviously putting $1,700 of it down to finance $5,000 at 4.5% for over 10 years. And the benefits, the payments in this example are $51 compared to what his savings were in this residence of $80. So even spreading that out over a 10-year loan, it's still saving him $20 a month. But do the math, or have the math done with your banker or tax person to see what the math does come for you. But I just look back at the 7 years payback on a 25-year investment, and that's pretty good. We talked about storms here a couple classes ago. The quality of the panels. We talked about American, but I think the statistic is they're certified for 1-inch hail, like a golf ball hail, to 125-mile-per-hour wind. A farmer north of town who has 168 panels on a hog confinement barn lost 2 panels 2 or 3 months ago. A big hailstorm came through, knocked out car windows, skylights, and so on. But he only lost 2 panels, and it was like no big deal for him. He got them replaced, and he explained he almost he kind of made it that was not that big a deal. But the hail hit at a certain part of the panel, it was like a seam or something, and that's the only that lost 2 out of 168. So they are pretty dependable. Why is this a great choice? It's a long-term investment. It kind of gets a handle on home energy prices for the 25 years. There's no secret that Alliance working on through the Iowa utility boards for hearings about raising prices. First time in 6 years or something like that. So that's a reality. It's coming. I live in Mount Vernon, where we're adding a franchise fee to electrical and gas bills. So there's extra incentive in Mount Vernon for people that look at solar. Environmental benefits, as well as just interest from neighbors. Solar's contagious. I think I heard an example already in this. I think this is class 8 of the series we've done so far. But there's a street in Marion that's got like 2 people that are on the street that are going with the solar panel as part of this incentive program, and a third one's even looking at it too. So I think there's an appetite for it, and you see it in neighborhoods, and I think it's appropriate for Lynn County. Next steps: record your contact information before you leave, which I think you've already done. Moxie will get in touch with you about a free, no obligation quote. In that time, you might want to talk to your banker, you might want to talk to your insurance person, make sure you get those things addressed ahead of time. This is the incentive of this. This is time sensitive with the September 30th date to make a decision. And Moxie says you'll have solar by December 31st. And celebrate the clean energy and tell your friends and neighbors and be impressed with how good you feel for doing a good thing here. I do need to put in a public relations plug. I talked about MREA as the umbrella organization here, but they, with signing up with this program, you get the opportunity to get a year's worth of membership with this group, and you think you're kind of interested in solar or energy savings and things like that. These guys are real energy nerds. They really get into different ways to save, whether it's whatever. I mean, they're really into it. You can extend your membership with a $30 or $75 membership, and they do an energy fair about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, in the Milwaukee area. Access to on-demand courses, newsletter covering policy updates, and it's a pretty good organization. This is proprietary information for MREA, so I can't just give you the slides. So I respect that, and so don't ask me that question. If you could have me forward the PDF on this. Some ways to join. Some contacts there. And in the news, you get the headlines of the solar or oil spill here, or a train wreck here with oil cars in towns. They're sensitive to the trains going through their town with coal cars or oil cars. Here, if you have an energy spill in solar, it's just called a nice day. It's well. Thank you much for your attention. Again, my name is Tom Weisler, and thank Eric for bringing this program. He was probably the point person in bringing this program and getting all the partners aligned. Lynn County, I don't think is represented here, but they are very engaged in this program, and for our energy partners with RECs and Alliance. So, any questions that I can address right offhand? I think we're doing okay on time, or if you have specific questions to Chris or Alliant, you can do that as well.
Have you had a lot of interest? This seems like kind of a smaller crowd.
Okay, you want to?
I'm a little disappointed.
I know the
in the size of the yeah. No, we've had groups as many as 47 people in them. Yeah, so this is, I think, that I counted as about 70 people. We've had groups of 5 one time at high school, but we've been 30 and 45 people at these things. So we expect that we'll hit that last threshold of 100 homes to get to that final threshold by the end of this program period. So that's what I can already feel it, and I can already see that coming down the line that's going to happen.
Okay, so that's the minimum, the 100 homes that you're hoping to get?
No, it's the amount of KW of installed solar. So we're estimating, that actually it's about 150 homes, but we are estimating that we'll get there by the time September 30th rolls around. So Tom mentioned a couple of things. I guess I just wanted to reiterate the word. Whether you get in today or get in on September 30th, you're going to still pay that $2.45 a watt to get into it. Talking to the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, they said that's probably the easiest way for them and for us to keep track of this. So we don't have people starting at different price points that we have to go back through and credit at different price points. So starting in October, when we know how many people are installed, it's just like getting a rebate check from Menards. We're just going to issue rebate checks in October for that to happen. So we expect it will get down to that $2.25 a watt, which will be 20 cents a watt then of a credit, depending upon whatever your system size is. So there were 2 things that Tom had brought up that I wanted to reiterate. First of all is to acknowledge our utility companies in the state of Iowa. And the reason we don't use batteries really isn't, it's a lot of safety issues. The technologies for battery storage are really not much further along than deep cell marine batteries, which need a lot of maintenance. They're hazardous to be around, so they're usually out in a shed or someplace in a confined space. The technologies coming down the road in a couple of years are going to be so safe that you can hang them in your kid's bedroom if you wanted to. We're not there yet. But that's okay for us. Our utility companies in Iowa treat us pretty fairly when it comes to our utility rates. If you lived in Arizona or California, you would be paying about 4 times what you're paying for your utility rate says you are here. So for right now, it's okay that they act as our battery, so to speak. I'm sorry, we won't call you that. But when you have excess energy in a day from solar, they're going to take it, use it across the street or in your neighborhood, and then you're going to get credit for it, and then you can use it. It's a credit on your balance. So that's mostly why we don't use batteries so far here in Iowa, because we're not pushed for it. We're not uncomfortable that we have to have batteries to offset those really high costs for solar or for electricity energy. And I forgot what the other question was. So the REC, Maquoketa Valley, I can answer your questions on that if you got a minute afterward. I didn't want to take everybody else's time, but they do treat things just a little bit differently with solar than Alliant Energy does. So that's all I wanted to say. I mostly kept quiet in the back of the room on purpose to let you guys go.
Will the group buy, if we get in, ever go to batteries?
Not in this time frame. No, it's not possible. Well, they may be this group buy program at some point in time down the road, but it won't be part of this program. Oh, what I was going to say is the basic. Tom mentioned he did it invertedly, but this is a basic. He said it's a basic system. The inverters that we're using are the best types of inverters and systems that you want to have in a house. We don't use string inverters. We call them dumb inverters. They're optimized inverters that we use are smart, so you can see every single one of your solar modules production. Or if it's not producing, you can see it's got a problem, and we'll help correct that issue. So that's what we use. So it's not just Tom, it's everybody, and this I want to make sure that you understand that it's a price point, but it's the best type of a price point. You're getting the best type of an inverter in there. And I'm going to try to stand still for you so that you don't get the sun anymore in your face.
Green Iowa used to do free audits, weatherization type audits. Does Alliant do free energy audits, or?
We do have free
I'm
energy
asking
audits.
I'm sorry.
Yep, we do. So call in. We can definitely move you through that process. There's certain criteria that you have to meet, but yes, we do have free energy audits. And they're really comprehensive. So if you haven't had one done at your home, I would really encourage you to do that. As Tom mentioned, we always like to pair the conversation about energy efficiency with renewables. So if you think about it, the lower your usage is, the less panels that you have to put on your roof, lower investment costs, etc. So it's just always important to look at energy efficiency.
Yes, sir.
Understand that the Iowa Utility Board agreed with Alliant to cap the rebate, and so I wonder what effect that would have on this program, and especially since Alliant is trying to go up in its overall rates, and at the same time its inputs have gotten cheaper because it's using natural gas more. So I wonder how all of this goes into impacting this program.
I'm going to sit quiet.
Yes, okay. So Alliant Energy did go through some new net metering changes, and those were per the Iowa Utilities Board. So previously with net metering, you could install whatever size system you want. If you overproduced any particular month, you would just continue to bank those credits forward. There would never be a monetary cash out. So if you oversized your system and produced a lot, which is great, you would never get any money back for that. So some changes were implemented earlier this year. Us and Mid-American Energy went through those changes with the Iowa Utilities Board over the course of 3 years, really looking at what makes sense for Iowa and net metering. So we're in a 3-year pilot. There are some changes that got implemented. You referenced kind of a cap or a credit limit. We will take a look at what your annual usage is. We'll take some factors into account and tell you what size system is eligible for full retail net metering. So when I say that, when I was talking about net metering and the production minus your usage, or your usage minus your production, that's a 1-for-1 value. And so it makes most financial sense for you to net meter, and by installing a system that it matches your usage. So you can still install any size system that you want. If you install a system that's over your load cap that we calculate for you, your incentive back from a utility perspective is slightly different. So that kWh value is different if you're net metering or if you're overproducing.
What is the cap?
It's specific to your usage.
Yeah,
So we
what
take
is the cap that the Iowa Utility Board agreed to?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Well, it's 40%, isn't it? You don't get, you won't get full credit. You only get credit for about 40% of what you actually produce. That's the maximum.
No, actually, we take a look at your annual usage, and we divide that by the number of years in a month, or the number of hours in the year, and then we apply a load factor to that. So that gives us what your load is. So what's difficult about this is load and usage are very different. Load is a common term that's used in our industrial environment. So demand, if you've heard of the word demand, it's really how much you're drawing off the system at any given point. So that's what we're trying to match your system to, because that's the impact that it's having on our system. There were some media claims out there saying that there was going to be a 40 or 50 or 60% reduction in system size. As we looked at the thousands of net metering customers that we have and the size system that they've installed, there was very minimal impact. So again, I'd encourage you to give us a call. We can take a look at what your usage is. I actually recently got a quote from Moxie, looked at my usage. My cap was 13 kW, which is pretty high. I don't know why we use so much energy, but for whatever reason we do at our house. And my house could only actually fit 9 kW. So I could fully retail net meter that. And we're seeing that most customers are really matching their demand when they're installing solar.
There's a couple of takeaways. That's a perfect example. We have a person on our staff that is an Excel spreadsheet master. I don't know how she said the Jedi master with this stuff. She spent almost three committed weeks trying to formulate what May was just trying to describe with their net metering. She's done it. So I think we've successfully pinpointed what will be your number, and every house is going to be different. But we're seeing it. We're seeing it everywhere from 75% to nearly 99% net metering. So literally, as she says, every home is different. And as the last thing she said, your home is probably going to be the limiting factor on how much solar you can produce. While she uses the example of a 13 kW house for consumption, most roofs aren't going to be able to hold 13 kWs worth of solar. So it's likely that you won't even touch or get into that net metering percentage limit that is imposed upon.
Yeah, I don't know how we use 13 kW.
Yeah,
we have an all-electric house, so I think that
Yeah,
adds
that'll
benefit to
do
it.
it,
We
yeah.
got two kids that are always, doing whatever.
Charging.
The lights on
Yes,
in the house, and yep.
Chris, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm going to be doing construction. It's actually zoned agriculture. I'm building a 30 by 66 building.
Okay.
And I was going to clean solar panels on that.
Okay.
Now I'm still working with contractors to get the building built. I see December 31st deadline. I mean, what if I don't have the building built in time for the solar panel?
Well, we're going to need
Extension
your.
or-
Yeah, we're going to need your. We want to have these done enough by the end of the year to really make the federal tax credit work for you. If it's okay with you, we want to get you this pricing. Let's just kind of have that agreement in place before September 30th, and then we'll get it on there as soon as it's possible with your timeline on your construction. So in the meantime, we're going to want to talk about how much energy you expect that solar to produce, where it's going, so on and so forth. So we've got some things that we need to do anyway with you before we get to that point. But it's probably not going to be constructed by December 31st because the building needs to be there by December 31st, or it'll be further along in the fall. But we kind of figured out the deadline back before September 30th. Yeah.
Besides the Moxie thing there, look at that Desire website to see if you might qualify some other. New construction is one of the areas that I know in Mount Vernon there's some program for it. So yeah, you might qualify for some other things besides the ones that we talked about here. So.
Yeah, so I was going to geothermal on that, and the size of the lot, it just wasn't going to work. So it's
Okay.
going to go solar.
Thanks. Oh,
I was going to just ask a question if you want to give some more info on it. I always feel like it's either a common question or worth maybe describing a little bit further. The east-west configuration, if that can be viable and what would affect that, and then also the life of the panels. And there's some, of course, efficiency decrease as time goes on, but might you be able to, Chris, in your experience, to elaborate on that just a
Yeah,
little bit?
yeah, sure can. The south-facing roof is the ideal facing for us.
I'm sorry, can I ask you to stand over here?
I sure can. Well, that
This is a teacher in me.
Okay, no
Then
problem.
they-
Better?
Yes, Okay.
The south-facing roof is the, yeah, you're struggling less too, I'm sorry that I didn't recognize
That's
that.
okay.
South-facing roof is where you want to have a south-facing ground-mounted array, is where we're going to point the solar onto. It's where the sun's intensity is year-round. And so we can, you're going to get the most bang for your buck, basically, if it's facing south. If you put it on an east and west-facing roof, that's completely fine as well. What will impact the effectiveness of solar on that is the pitch of your roof. So as the pitch of your roof gets to be more severe, that westerly facing roof in the morning isn't going to see sunlight until afternoon. But if you've got a shallower pitched roof, it's going to start catching sunlight sooner. So there is not a straight percentage loss number that you can just say out loud to a group, but we can calculate it because if we know the pitch angle and which direction it exactly faces, we plug that information into a Department of Energy website to help estimate what the solar production should be. And that's what we do in all of the site assessments, is to give you that number and show you what it should produce. So no matter what direction it faces, just not north, east, west, or south, you'll do fine with solar energy collection. And the other question was about the lifetime of the solar modules, the life of the solar modules.
How much the efficiency?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And that's something, again, we talk about at the site evaluations. The solar modules are warranted for 25 years of production value. And they're just like your cell phone. They're going to get slower as they get older, and that's built into that warranty. So the manufacturer says that over 25 years, at the end of 25 years, it'll still have 80% of its efficiency left in it. So to get there every year, year over year, they say just expect 0.5% loss of power production year over year for 25 years. So NASA put solar panels in place in the 1950s that are still over 50% efficient. So it'll most likely be more than 80% efficient 25 years from now. I keep putting your question off there. Back, you had a question.
Oh, that's fine. Tom was saying something about the warranty. It's 5-year labor, 12-year what?
Inverter.
Inverter, okay.
Yep.
25 on the panel.
Yeah, I say the solar module gets all the paparazzi press, and it's always fun. People have pictures of solar modules, but I think that's the first picture I've ever seen of an inverter. It sits in your basement, or it sits out on the farm behind the solar array, and no one knows it's there. So, but that inverter does so much work for us, and for you, not for me, but that's why it wears out. It has the potential to wear out because there are moving parts inside that inverter where there's not for the solar module.
Is there a lot of noise and heat produced from that inverter?
No. It has an inside, it has a fan inside of it that cools it. It's usually in your mechanical room if it's in the house next to your breaker panel. In the house, you won't even know it's there. Just quietly working.
Because we're going to hook up the house to the shop that we're building.
Yeah, and we can put it outside too. They can withstand 40 degrees below zero temperatures. So they sit outside on farms year-round here in Iowa. They do just fine. So, question, Mike?
Are there alternatives to solar panels like shingles, that sort of thing that you can put on your roof?
Yeah, Tom mentioned that in the presentation. The solar shingles are kind of coming along, but they're really expensive. They're not nearly as efficient as what a solar module will be. The advantage that they do offer is that they're more aesthetically pleasing, but I feel like solar modules are my children. I would never tell them that they're not aesthetically pleasing. I like them on the roof. They're just fine, especially now that we have modules. This one it's an older picture, that home that had 19 modules. The outside had silver framing all around it, so you could see every one of them up on the roof. But most of them, now that we have a black frame, so you can't really tell where one module starts and one ends on there. So, but to answer your question, the solar shingles are probably not quite there yet, and that would be an option.
The reason I'm asking is that about 250 houses in our neighborhood are in historic districts.
Okay.
And there are some constraints on the appearance of homes from the street. And so that's going to affect the ability of people in that part of the neighborhood to participate in this program.
Yep, and we have that same issue in Iowa City. They have a terrific historical area in Iowa City, and not that you're looking for a way around this, but garages in those homes weren't technically part of the historical process. So garages in those cases is where those solar modules went if somebody was looking for that solution.
The solar panels on the ground, can some follow the sun?
They can, but we normally don't construct those.
Okay, I'm just asking.
But they absolutely can.
Okay, I'm just curious,
Yep.
that can't happen on a roof?
No.
Okay.
No, and for that matter, and if you're okay with all hanging around, I can answer questions like this in a group setting. It's helpful. I don't need to take any more of your time though if you do need to get going. On the roof, we just fix them right to whatever your roof or trussing, your trussing system is under there. The rafter, that's what I was going for. Whatever pitch angle that roof is, we're tying it right to that roof. We're not actually using the rope, we're screwing it. What?
For outbuildings, you said that if the grid is out, the solar would be out.
Right.
So during the day, like if you had fans or stuff running, like it was a sunny day, would it always shut off, or would there be power still being pulled from that? Like if there was an outage during the day and it was a really sunny day, could you still be getting power for?
No, your solar equipment has to shut down. As I said, their job, and it really dawned on me a couple of years ago, their job really is to keep your lights on at your house during everything. And if you think about that, they have to then get it from someplace. So there's a balancing act that they have. They have to pull it in, and then it has to go into their system someplace. We're now part of their system. We're now part of that generation of electricity. So they have to know where that energy is coming from at all times, because if that power goes out on everywhere in their system except your house, somebody could get zapped out there while they're trying to fix your neighborhood. So we shut everything off. Yep. The fire code, they have systems built into the inverter that shuts it off. There are breaker switches in place that act as a backup that also shut it off. So then if the fire department shows up and it's not off still, there's another switch that can be shut down as a precaution. So we try to take every step possible. But we're following electrical code also. It's built into those codes as well. You had a question?
Two questions. So on farm we've got on-site generators.
Okay.
They kick on if the power goes off.
Yep.
When those generators switch on, they automatically, because of what you just said, so that we don't backfeed power into the grid.
Yes.
Do they also flip the switch so that you're not trying to backfead power into a DC solar?
Yes. Yes. There's without going into too much detail, we do wire it with backed up generator systems, even automatic ones, so that it won't feed back into the solar array, and the solar array won't feed into the system while the generator's on.
And then the ground mount ones, are you just driving those into the ground, or do you put down cement first and you're bolting them down?
It depends upon the topography, and it depends upon how many are going in. We can pile drive those into the ground 6 or 8 feet. Our traditional ground-mounted array has an 18-inch hole with 2-inch steel that sits inside of it 5 feet into the ground to get below the frost line. So depending upon what the needs are, we'll do either one of those. Yes, sir.
So the next step is if we signed up here, we'll be contacted.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I may not get to it tomorrow or
Okay.
the next couple of days, but I will get to you, I promise. And if you are an Alliant customer, there's a form that you can take home with you, or you can fill it out, and you can email it to me, and it simply lets them send me your energy bills, and that's what we need. Some of you already have it on your computer. It's very easy to format. I need to just see kilowatt hours used each month, and then the dollars that are spent for those kilowatt hours. But that's what they'll send to me as well. Thank you all again for coming.
Thank you for your attendance. Yeah. Thank you for your questions.